and welcome back to Hope Follows. I'm your host, Julie Kenzler, and I'm so glad that you're here to be with us today as we talk about hope in the midst of our life struggles and trials and tribulations. This is where we talk about hope and joy, reclaiming that joy in our lives. And today I am so happy to have my guest, Pastor Blare Wood, with us today. And Pastor Blare is currently an executive pastor at Desert Springs Church here in Arizona. But before that, he was a lead youth pastor of 6 campuses, very large churches, here in Phoenix. He has such an incredible story to share and give you hope. So let's introduce Pastor Blare Wood.
How you doing?
Hi, good. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And let's start off with talking about, I always like to start off with maybe like your favorite childhood memory. Just something
My favorite
random.
childhood memory? I played football since I was in 4th grade.
Okay.
And so it's honestly one of my earliest memories is just playing football. I have a brother who's 2 years older than me. And so I always got to watch him play sports. And so I was so excited when my parents finally let me get on the football field and start playing. And so some of my fondest memories are just playing sports. And I wasn't as good as my brother, but my parents always encouraged me to just chase after what I wanted to do. So that was really fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so was there rivalry with you and your brother?
Of course there was rivalry.
Yeah?
I have a little brother too who's 6 years younger than me, okay? And so our house was wild.
Three
it was
boys?
crazy. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So my parents kept a tally of all of our ER visits next to our heights.
No.
Yes.
No, so the heights are on the wall.
Yeah, and then our ER tally right next to it.
Oh my goodness.
So I think we went over 34 times.
With 3 boys.
3 boys.
Who won? Who had the most?
My little brother, because we beat him up a lot.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
So, yeah.
Of course.
So
poor guy.
How's
he doing today?
He's good. Yeah, he serves Jesus, so that's good. That's good.
Well, of course he does.
I know, right?
What else is he gonna do?
I know, right?
Beat up by his brothers. Yes. Oh, that's funny. Now you were raised in a Christian home.
I was, yeah.
Father was a pastor.
Yes.
Right. So
my
tell
whole
us
life.
a little bit about that.
So we. I grew up in a home where my parents were both in ministry, and which was really cool. I loved it. We moved 6 times before I was 13. Just all over the U.S.
All over the country.
Yeah, we went California, Oregon, Missouri, back to California, to Prescott. Actually, I lived in Prescott for a year.
Okay.
And then we finally landed in Washington State. And that's kind of where I call home. We were there for 12 years and loved it up there. I loved being a PK. And there were so many cool things.
Everybody knows
sorry,
that.
pastor's kid.
Most people know that.
Yeah, but I loved that life because for the most part, for the most of my life I did, just because I got to share my parents with people and I got to see people be impacted, in a really special way. And not a lot of parents get to do that. Not a lot of kids get to see their parents do that.
Did your brothers feel the same way? Or did anybody feel a little jealous of, I want more time with my parents?
Yeah, there was always times like that.
Right.
My parents, I feel like, did a really great job of doing their best to balance.
That's hard.
And it's really hard, especially in ministry, when everyone's vying for your time.
Yes.
But my dad especially was very intentional with his time with us and would try to bring us along as much as possible. He knew how to say no. He was very good about that. And he knew how to say no to other people to prioritize our games or whatever we were doing. And so I was very blessed to have parents who had a great perspective and priorities.
Well, one thing that I know my husband Kurt has said, what resonated with him in one of the messages you shared at church was what you're going to be sharing today, but was really about how your parents handled some situations.
Yeah.
And that stuck with Kurt.
Yeah.
And really just not that we're upping our game as parents, but because our kids are 17 to 25, they're pretty much raised.
Yeah.
But maybe just having a perspective as now parents of adults, considering how your parents were.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah, excited.
So let's talk about, so football was big for you. And were you a star, like a football star?
My older brother was definitely a star.
He was the star, okay.
And I was good. I was pretty good. Not as good as him. I was recruited a little bit, but outside of that, it was really fun for me. But I think I enjoyed the social aspect of it. I enjoyed kind of what it brought confidence. It brought friendships and all of that. So I think there's a lot of stuff that I gained from it that wasn't just me performing at a certain level. So it was a community I needed for a certain time.
Sure.
And then ultimately it was something that led me down a wrong path too. But we'll get into that.
We're going to talk about that. Right. Well, and there's a lot to say about things that we get involved with. And are we around the right people and making sure even our kids, we're going to talk about teenage life because that's what Pastor Blare is going to share, his story as a teenager and his struggles. And maybe many of you are experiencing that with your own teenage children. You're having some struggles, and we'll be able to relate to his story because there's definitely a hope to this story. A hope follows amazing story. And so let's get into that.
All right. Yeah. You want me to just get started?
Sure.
Okay.
Please
so
share.
Again, I played football pretty much my whole life, and it was around in my junior year, probably sophomore to junior year, and again, I was a youth pastor for a very long time, and so I've always said the most vital time for any teenager is between their sophomore year and going into their junior year. I really feel like it's that age and that point in life where they're really deciding, am I going to find my identity in Christ and in my walk with the Lord, or I'm going to find my identity in my friendships or in sports or in whatever else the world is offering them. And it's such a vital age, 14, 15, 16, such a vital age for teenagers. And the reason I know that is because it's pretty much what I experienced.
Right.
And so it was around that time that I made a decision to walk away from Jesus because what the world had to offer me was more attractive to me. I was looking for acceptance. I was looking for friendships. I was looking to kind of find my own way. And there were so many amazing things about being a pastor's kid. But at the same time, you are looked at differently when you're at church, right?
And at school too?
And at school,
right.
Absolutely.
Were you at a private school or public school?
Public, yeah. Okay. I was at a public school. And so, when they hear my dad's a pastor, they're like, well, then you must be a perfect kid.
Okay.
Or you can't act a certain way because your dad's a pastor. So you would get all of these stereotypes put on you. And for me, I wanted to be an individual so much that was kind of one of the motivating factors. Well, I'm just going to walk away from Jesus.
And prove something.
I'm going to prove that I'm my own person.
Right.
And I think what a lot of teenagers are wanting to do is prove who they are and kind of come into their own. And
there's that battle of
exactly.
I want to be part of my family and I'm with my parents, but I also am my own person. Yes. It's hard to figure that out.
It's really hard. And it's also hard for parents to give students space to explore that a little bit. Because you either react by pulling the reins in or just letting go too much. And there's that balance. It's a really difficult thing to do. Being a parent's really hard.
It is. Parenting isn't for cowards.
No, it's not.
That's Randy Carlson or Kevin Lehman, and they are so right on. Maybe
so
Dr.
right.
Dobson, but
yeah.
So you walked away. What does that mean?
So I walked away from Jesus. So pretty much what I said, if I made a decision to not prioritize Christ anymore in my life. So I knew that Jesus existed. I knew God existed. I had encounters with him, so I could not deny that God existed. I was just no longer interested in pursuing a relationship with him. I broke up with Jesus. It's probably a good way to put it. That I no longer pursued him at all. And I believe.
Did you go to church?
Yeah, of course. My dad was a pastor, right? So I had to show up and
that was it, though.
Go through the motions. I knew exactly how to act like a Christian. It's not that hard to act like a Christian, especially at church. All you gotta do is lift your hands and walk out, right? So it's kind of what I did.
Wow.
And at school, though, I was a completely different person. And so I hung out with all of my football friends, and it was the summer before my junior year. I went to kind of my first party and did drugs for the first time that night. And I didn't get hooked, right away with that. It was more of a social thing. I want to be accepted. And I was looking for acceptance.
Right.
And so I tried that. But we were going into football season, so that was more of a priority for me. It was my senior, getting me my junior year. And so went into football. And after football, I kind of still did the party scene, but it was pretty just weekend stuff, so it was really light. But I really dug my heels into this lifestyle that this is who I am now. And once you make that choice, it's a really hard thing to come back from. And I think it was around then that my parents started realizing that, you know what, there's something different about Blare. And talking to them now, I think it was at that time they were kind of strategizing, what do we do? My dad's a pastor, and I'm sure he felt some pressure of like, well,
get your kid under control.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because if people are looking at you like you have some rebellious kid, you're supposed to be the pastor, you're supposed to be teaching other people how to be parents and all that. So I'm sure there was that pressure that he felt, which he never put on us because he's a great dad. But
yes. That's admirable.
But I think it was in that point that they really decided to give me to Jesus. Instead of take control and come in and throw me in a rehab program or whatever, they just were going to commit to pray.
They knew that you were
they
partying,
they had
drugs,
a feeling.
drinking, and okay. So when did they know for sure? When did it come to a head? I guess. Not until I came to them and told them how bad it actually was. Okay. All right. So then, how long a period was this?
So about 2 years.
And I think I remember something about losing a lot of weight.
Yeah, so...
okay, so 2 years kind of living this dual lifestyle.
Yeah.
And mom and dad didn't know. How about brothers? Did they know?
My older brother knew.
Okay.
He was kind of going down the same road, not as severe as me.
Yeah.
He had an idea. I don't think... None of them knew the full extent, but he had an idea. But it's about my senior year, football started, and... I weighed about 195 pounds for football, and I worked out all the time. It was a very huge priority for me, and it's where my identity was found. So when I walked away from my identity in Jesus, I then tried to put my identity in my playing ability. And so we went undefeated that whole season, went to state, won a bunch of games, eventually lost. And then after football was over, I was just like, I don't know who I am anymore.
You're a senior. You're not going to have any more football.
Nope, and that's over.
Yes.
And so I'm searching for acceptance from another group of people, and again, just picked the wrong group. And
part of the football crowd?
Yeah, still part of the football crowd, but we all kind of drifted in one direction together. And so I did cocaine for the first time, and that's when I really got hooked. And so I did a lot of other drugs, but cocaine was the one I was definitely heavily addicted to, and so it controlled my life for about 8 months.
8 months, and then you went to mom and dad.
Yeah. So
how did that go?
First, I went to the Lord, actually.
Okay. Oh,
so,
that's right.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I graduated high school. I started about 195 pounds. Beginning of my senior year, I graduated high school at 135 pounds.
Right.
So
60 pounds
I
lighter.
was skin and bones, and because it just controlled my life.
And I'm sure they were concerned.
Of course, yeah. And so it's at this point where, again, they had every excuse to take action. They had every excuse to come in and confront me. But it was at this point they really committed to just pray and give me the Lord. And that's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I can only imagine.
Wow.
And so.
Well, I really want to talk about more about your parents.
Yeah.
And how they approached this. But then let's talk about when I guess every hard story has some kind of climax, rising action.
Yeah.
Yours was coming to Jesus.
Yes.
Back to Jesus.
Back to Jesus.
The Bible says
That's
that
right.
we train up our children and they will come
Yep,
back.
exactly.
So what was that? It was after high school graduation.
Yeah, so I graduated high school and I have all these friends going off to college. I have all these friends.
What were your plans?
I didn't have any.
You didn't have any?
No, I was lost.
Okay.
I felt so lost and alone and didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and it just got to the point, when you're an addict, you do have moments of clarity. And it's just when you're coming down. And so I was in this moment of clarity. I was at my house and just in my bedroom. And one thing I say is that the entire time I walked away from Jesus, Jesus never walked away from me. That he was I could sometimes feel his presence with me. that he would just never leave me alone. And one of the motivating factors for me doing other things and trying other drugs was to try to just get away from God. That if I do something bad enough, he'll leave me alone, right? Because I'll be too dirty for him or too far away for him, too much of a sinner for him.
That's such a visual.
Yeah.
Of you trying to run from him.
Exactly.
Like, I don't want
leave me alone.
To be, I don't want you near me.
Exactly.
I don't want any part of you right now.
Yep. And so.
But you knew he was there still.
I just knew it. I knew it. And so it was in this moment of clarity that I was in my room and I just looked up to my ceiling, and because obviously God's above us, right? So I looked at my ceiling. I was like, God, if you want me, I'm right here. But if you don't, I understand. And so I left it up to him. Okay. God, if you want me still, I'm right here. But if you don't, I get it, right? And it was just in that moment. It wasn't at an altar. It wasn't at some church service. It wasn't at a camp. It wasn't anything like that. It was just in my room. God just came down, and his presence just filled my room, and just had the most incredible encounter.
And I'm sure
with
crying.
The Lord. Yeah, I mean, just lost it.
Weeping, yes.
And he healed me of my addiction overnight. Never experienced withdrawal.
Wow.
And
that's a miracle.
Yeah, a miracle. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing short of a miracle. And so is that, kind of the next day, I kind of confessed to my parents and just opened up to them, and they knew. That's kind of like, we knew something was going on.
Right.
And but God answered their prayer.
Wow. I know this is hard to talk about, I'm sure.
You know what? I think every time I share my story, it brings healing.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Every time I open my mouth, it brings healing because I'm giving purpose to my pain. Right?
Purpose to the pain.
And every time you give purpose to your pain, it brings healing. Every time you allow God to use what you've gone through, he heals you even more of the shame that you might experience or the doubt you might have experienced or whatever you might be struggling with.
What you're actually doing is putting a hand out to people.
Yeah, 100%.
I did this. I went off the path, and I made it. I went back to Jesus, and you can do this too.
Absolutely.
I mean, it gives people such a relief. Okay, so my child will be okay, or my grandchild.
Yeah.
Or it could be me. I'll be okay.
Yeah. But you got to make that decision.
Right.
To come back to Christ, and you can't force your kid to come back to the Lord. You can't force your estranged spouse to come back to the Lord. You can't force anyone to come to Jesus. It has to be a decision that they make. And the best thing that you can do for them is, number one, pray, and number two, put them in environments and give them opportunities to be surrounded by people who love Christ. And those two things make a huge difference. But it might take time, and you're in it for the long game, not for the short game.
That's right.
Yep.
Football talk.
That's right. Come on.
Of course. When you were in the midst of your rebellious time and the addiction, and maybe you realized it was an addiction, did you ever get to a point where you knew it was really bad, but you just didn't care?
Yes.
Was that just a constant attitude or lifestyle, I guess?
It's a constant battle of your conscience.
Okay.
Because there's a certain point where everyone has a conscience. Everyone knows what's right and wrong.
God gave us that.
That's right. But you make a decision to ignore it, numb it.
Yes.
And when it's socially acceptable to go against your conscience, it's a lot easier. And so when you're surrounded by people...
Can you repeat that again?
When it's socially acceptable to ignore your conscience, it's a lot easier to do so, right? Yes. When you're surrounded by people who are doing the exact same thing you are, ignoring their conscience, ignoring what's right and wrong, it becomes a lot easier to just do wrong.
If it's all about who you're around with, who you hang out with.
Yeah.
I mean, show me your checkbook, I'll show you your heart. Show me who you hang out with, I'll show you who you're going to be in 10 years.
Yes, exactly. Show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so for you, you have your parents are watching this, and they know you're not with the right crowd.
Yeah.
They could have moved you to a different school. They could have done all these different steps. And I think a lot of us parents, we think of these big drastic measures.
Yes.
Instead of really just being on our knees.
Do you know what actually they did? They did the opposite of what probably most parents would do.
That's what
They
is
invited my
amazing.
friends into their house. The ones they knew weren't right for me. They brought them into their home. They made our home a safe place for them. I had one of my friends who I was deep in that lifestyle with. His parents had a very volatile relationship, and it would come out in abuse of him and his sister. And so there was one time that he grabbed his sister and just drove away from the house because it was going. Guess where he came?
Your house.
Our house. And just came in, and they were both bawling and just came running to my parents. And it's because my parents created a safe place for people who didn't know Jesus to come and to experience the love of Christ. They didn't shove Jesus down their throat. All they did was just open their arms, you know.
That's what we're called to do.
That's what we're called to do, right?
We're called to love on people.
Exactly.
To welcome them with open arms.
And all of my friends loved my parents.
Did you have friends come to the Lord?
Yes, but not till a long time after.
Yeah.
One decision I had to make was, especially when I turned my life around, is I had to cut some ties, you know, with certain people, which is really hard.
Yeah, how did you do that?
I had to have a conversation with some of them and just say, I am looking to live this lifestyle of just being clean and following the Lord. And I just need to take a break from our friendship, and it was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. But I can tell you in the, I don't know how long I've been sober, I don't keep track. In the 14 years that I've been clean, I've had 3 or 4 of them in crisis reach out to me randomly.
Wow.
Because they know I'm stable.
Yes.
You know?
That's right.
And so it's been really cool. And one of them has come to know the Lord since, which is cool.
One.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Which is what it's about.
But knowing that you're there for them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to see how you have really taken the reins of your own life.
Yeah.
And having your parents support and love.
Yeah.
What a tremendous story.
Yeah. Super blessed.
Wow.
Super blessed.
Tell us more about your parents. I mean, obviously they're not perfect.
No.
But why did they just resort? Why did they just
I
resort
know, right?
to pray? I
Seriously.
mean, it is so natural for us parents to really try to take action and manipulate in a very authentic, real, concerned way to help our child out of their addiction, out of their crisis, out of whatever struggle they're dealing with, depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
But they stuck to their belief of just praying.
Yeah.
What have they said to you?
Well, I think knowing them, it comes down to what your priorities are. You know, if your first priority is Jesus, then He is always your only solution, right? If you put your kids above the Lord, you will try to take control every single time. And that's what would cause parents to, okay, I'm taking control of the situation. We're moving you this, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this, because I'm going to solve the problem, right? Which is so broken. It's so broken to think that we have enough life-changing ability to change our own kids' lives. We might have brought them into this world, but that doesn't mean that we can change their hearts.
And even as believers, it is hard for us to remember
Absolutely.
that. But I think we need people around us to help remind us.
Yes.
Jesus, that's who you go to. You go to Jesus.
And my parents just walked what they taught. And they lived what they preached.
Did they have a group of friends praying with them?
I'm not sure, actually. Probably.
I'm sure they did.
I'm sure they did.
Yes.
And, you know,
and maybe even not a group, but just
maybe a couple,
some key people.
But, you know, they really prioritized the Lord, and they went to Him first, and they were led by discernment and not by emotion. And I'm just so grateful that's the way they handled it. Because if they would
have them on the show.
Yeah, I know, right? If they would have come into my life and tried to force me to do anything, I would have rebelled and probably ran faster the other direction. So.
I mean, that's just natural. We tell our kids to do something and they do the opposite.
Right? I have a 2-year-old. That's exactly what I'm experiencing right now.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, well, thank you so much for sharing your story. What a beautiful message of hope for our friends watching. And I would like to pray.
Yeah.
Lord, thank you so much for this time with Pastor Blare and his story. What a hard story of suffering, of just not knowing what his identity is and running from you And God, we just praise you how you never left his side. No matter what, you were right there. And as soon as he reached out to you, God, you just filled him up and helped him to be clean and to turn his life around to a new direction. And I pray that all of our friends watching this episode will also know that whatever struggle they're going through, if they know anyone dealing with addiction, rebellion, anything like that, Lord,
God.
they will know to just go to you, God, and to seek you and find people to help them. But we know Jesus is the ultimate helper.
Yes, Lord.
In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Wow, well, thank you. And
Absolutely.
I have a verse for you.
Awesome.
Actually, it's not a verse, it's a quote
Okay.
by Thomas Brooks. Prayer crowns God with the honor and glory due to his name. And God crowns prayer with assurance and comfort.
Yeah.
The most praying souls are the most assured souls.
That's so good.
I just think
love
of your
that quote.
parents. I haven't
Oh,
even
yeah.
met them, and
Come
I
on.
think of them.
Next time they're in town, I'll definitely let you
Yes.
know. Yeah.
And we can even maybe go online and interview them online
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
Yes. Okay, will you pick a big
Yes.
idea?
All right. Big
The
idea.
big idea is for our friends to take action and scatter and spread hope and joy
Yeah.
and encouragement.
That's
around.
amazing. All right, let me read it. Sit with your family and watch some funny videos to get a good dose of laughter.
Who doesn't
Love that.
need laughter?
Love that idea.
What will you watch?
Oh man, Jim Gaffigan. Have you ever seen his stand-up?
No.
He's a clean
Okay,
stand-up comic.
Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah,
Watch that.
he makes my dad especially laugh, which makes me laugh.
Yes.
So that's one thing that my family loves to do is we love to laugh together. So
Yes, I will have to watch that.
yeah, you should.
I would watch Alexander and the Very Bad, Horrible, No Good Day, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I have. That's amazing. That's a
That
good one.
is hilarious.
I also love Dumb and Dumber, so
Oh,
can't go wrong.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah, it is a classic.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, friends, for being here. Thank
Absolutely.
you, Pastor Blare.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and Hope Follows. So don't forget that. To be encouraged, go to hopefollows.com for more information and resources